Good morning and welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Political reflections. Trump added that he has stopped receiving intelligence briefings at the White House, arguing, "I can do my job without any intelligence whatsoever." In this, you see dozens of military helicopters flying over the Colombian border town Cucuta near Venezuela. Unconfirmed reports claim that these might be US helicopters. Andrew Corribico in the Oriental Reviews writing, "A Venezuelan coup could challenge OPEC Plus and build Fortress America." The Bolivarian Republic is experiencing an unprecedented crisis after the US and many of its Latin American allies from the so-called Lima Group recognized Juan Guaido as the country's interim president. The 35-year-old head of the National Assembly seemingly came out of nowhere in his meteoric rise to power and symbolically declared himself the head of state on the national holiday of 23rd January, which commemorates the day when a Venezuelan strongman was deposed in 1958. This attempted usurpation of power came just days after the leaders of a failed low-level military mutiny called on the people to take to the streets in support of regime change. Andrew says there's no doubt that what's happening right now in Venezuela is the culmination of the years-long hybrid war being waged against it by the US. The economic warfare of the past combined with some governmental mismanagement to produce an economic crisis that gave birth to color revolutionary unrest and terrorist stunts such as the attempted assassination of Maduro last summer by an explosive drone. The military pledged loyalty to the Constitution and is therefore determined to support Maduro, but there's a real risk that this latest color revolutionary unrest will trigger a self-sustaining cycle of hybrid war destabilization that might escalate to the level of a civil war or even a foreign invasion if this pre-planned and coordinated multilateral regime change operation succeeds. In that scenario, Venezuela would be left on its own to fend off this aggression in spite of its multipolar relationships. And this is interesting. Russia and China aren't capable of directly defending Venezuela, even though they've voiced their support for international law. And their real national interests rest with ensuring that Caracas repays its billions of dollars of loans to them and respects the energy and military deals that were previously signed, despite not having any way of guaranteeing that will happen if Maduro is overthrown. Therefore, the most likely international outcome of his ouster would probably be that the Washington-backed coup authorities would declare those deals null and void, after which they'd likely open up the world's largest oil deposits in the Orinoco Belt to US companies. The long-term repercussions are that the US could challenge Russia and Saudi Arabia's OPEC Plus alliance and advance its Fortress America geopolitical project in the Western Hemisphere. Maduro said in RT, US intervention in Venezuela will be much worse Vietnam than you could imagine. Here he's seen receiving the credentials of Her Excellency Anuphone Kith-i-Rath, designated ambassador of the Lao People's Democratic Republic. And August 2018, I referred to that attack by drone, and I was also talking about Trump relishing his financial warfare strategies, of which Venezuela is the best example. And I was saying he was also attacking Maduro by remote control drone. And the reason that Andrew's touched on it is really that access to oil has defined 20th century empires. And the petrodollar agreement was the key to the ascendancy of the US as the world's sole superpower. Threats by any nation to undermine the petrodollar system are viewed by Washington as tantamount to a declaration of war against the United States of America. 8th of May 2017, I was writing about Nicolas Maduro's Venezuela being at breaking point, but we've been breaking for a while. President Trump says no trade deal will be final until he meets with China's Xi. Don't worry, folks. Charles Moore has food sorted for a no Brexit deal. Have a look at this I think it's a Spectator. Looking at the breakdown of the 2016 vote, 80%, yes, that's 80% of females 18 to 24 voted to remain, 61% of males. That figure is likely higher with the newly enfranchised. The switch to leave occurs massively at 50 and over, the will of the middle-aged and the retired. And I wrote at the end of the year that the recalcitrant Jeremy Corbyn refuses to pivot on Brexit and surge into 10 Downing Street on a youth quake, which is what Simon Sharma is talking about. Baltic Sea, a Russian Air Force Su-27 flanker, is seen aggressively banking into a US Air Force F-15C Eagle. Take a look at that video. Let's move to international markets. I like this from Ian Bremmer, trickle down in picture form. US stocks just had their best January in 30 years, following the worst December since the Great Depression. The S&P gained 7.9% in January, the strongest first month since 1989. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 114.44. Dollar index 95.60, Japanese yen 108.94, Swiss franc 0.99, where are we? 0.9942, the pound 131.08, Aussie 0.7244, Indian rupee 71.105, South Korean won 11.19. Emerging market currencies have rallied sharply. I think they look toppy. Brazilian real 364.51, Egyptian pound 17.6755. And the rand, really at the top of the range, 13.3069. This is a chart of the dollar index. A lot of people were throwing in the towel. We're starting to grind back higher. Need to see us move about another % higher in order to negate the bearish sentiment we previously saw. Euro dollar, this is a one-year chart as well, could not break through 115. It's been proving a strong ceiling. And we can't seem to break much below 113 at the moment. But I think we are tilted to the downside, in particular because of the flow of fundamental news is really quite poor. I said at the end of the year, if the US economy slows, I can guarantee you the rest of the world will slow further. To wit, Eurozone economic growth fails to recover in late 2018 as Italy falls into recession. Amazon shares dropped after a tepid first quarter sales forecast and concerns about rising costs. Moving on, gold, which has been on a bull run, last at 1316.5. Let's see how this plays out, but I think really we got to correct back below 1300 now. Crude oil, which popped through the top of the range but has come back into it, is at $53.86 in New York. Cocoa futures have dropped in New York 10% this month, touching a 7-week low on Thursday. A decline in the chocolate ingredient may help counter the rising costs of freight, packaging and wages for the likes of Hershey chocolates. Emerging markets January 2019 saw a big rally in EM currencies. You can see this in the chart. Robin Brooks is saying that's because of a dovish Fed that capitulated on hikes, reduced US-China trade tensions, and high carry. Look at this cartoon from iGado. Joseph Kabila's masterclass speaks to something I wrote on the 7th of January, why the DR Congo delayed election results. And I quoted Stalin, "It's not the people who vote that count, it's the people who count the votes." And I said as well, this is a clear-cut case where the will of the people is being subverted. It's egregious, it's outrageous. Maldives is seeking to renegotiate with China over the Belt and Road debt. This was willful corruption, Ibrahim Amir told the FT. The former government knew what they were doing, getting kickbacks from contractors. That's why the contract prices were too high. China said it had provided loans at below market rates for projects in the Maldives in accordance with the wishes and development needs of the Maldives. Saying that Mali was determined not to allow a debt for equity swap that would result in China securing effective control over territory. In 2017, neighboring Sri Lanka handed over the Chinese-funded Hambantota port to a Chinese state company on a 99-year lease, having struggled to service more than $1 billion in debt. Mr. Nasheed said, "But we cannot, and no one should expect us to pay back anything that hasn't come." 18th of June last year, I was writing about the Hambantota port, and I said the first overarching point is that creditors are not Santa Claus, and miscues will exact a very heavy price. Countries will be Hambantoted. Sudan's army says it will not allow the state to fall amid protests. The armed forces will not allow the Sudanese state to fall or to slide into the unknown, said General Kamal Abdul Maruf. In a statement, he said those leading the protests were hostile to Sudan and were hurting the country's image. But Jay Devamont responded, the Sudanese army's statement in defense of Omar al-Bashir doesn't really change much. Security services are loyal to regimes until they are not. 21st of January, I said President Bashir has managed to claw his way back into position before and is a political Harry Houdini. Otherwise, he would not have lasted more than 3 decades. But it's clear these are the last days or the end times. South African all shares up 2.69% this year. Dollar versus Rand at the top of the range, 13.317. The Rand is at the top of the range. Nigerian all shares down 2.78% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is down 2.73%. The remains of the Angolan former UNITA rebel leader Jonas Savimbi will be reburied. This is according to the East Africa. Interesting article by Reuters about the Dusit situation. Bomber who blew himself up outside a Nairobi hotel, launching an attack that killed 21 people, was already so well known to Kenyan police that they had emblazoned his face across billboards under the slogan "Wanted, Dead or Alive." Mahir Khalid Riziki was barely 20 when he joined a radical Islamist cell that assassinated police in his hometown of Mombasa. Officers said his mosque in the coastal Kenyan city funneled recruits to the Somalia-based Islamist group Al-Shabaab, which claimed the January 15 attack in Nairobi. Riziki was 25 when he died, fled after a deadly police raid on the mosque in 2014. Warnings may be too vague or too late. Riziki's journey spanned at least 2 East African nations that share borders with Kenya. After he disappeared, we monitored him to Tanzania, then later to Somalia. Then he went quiet until he made a surprise appearance in the Dusit attack, a retired Kenyan counter-terrorism officer told Reuters. Slender, chisel-faced Riziki often prayed at Mombasa's Musa Mosque, a newly renovated building whose green and white minaret is surrounded by a jumble of small shops. The mosque was a hotbed of extremism in the lead up to the 2014 raid, authorities said, although now the leadership has changed. Kenyan police said Riziki was influenced by two of the mosque's former imams, Sheikh Abu Rogo and Abu Bakr Sharif, also known as Makaburi, who they said recruited for Al-Shabaab and were widely thought to have been assassinated by the Kenya police. He, with many other youth, really idolized Rogo and loved his preachings, Mohammed told Reuters. They spoke about him all the time. Al-Shabaab is branching out. Its profile now looks a lot more like Al-Qaeda in East Africa used to than the principally Somali organization it was for many years. A lot of detail in this report. Do have a read. I wrote over the weekend, a lot now depends on whether this was a one-off or not. The shilling strengthened to 100.6 on my screen. Every January, every year, every forecast about the shilling predicts a 10 to 15% devaluation. It's truly mind-boggling. Key levers are inward remittances and the price of fuel, both of which favor the shilling at the moment. It's trading at 100.6. Have a look at the chart. You can see quite a nice rally. Kenya's CBA Group gets 53% of the merged entity with it in NIC Bank in the biggest bank deal in decades. A privately held CBA will get 53% of the merger entity while NIC will hold the balance. Merger will be complete by the third quarter. The new lender will remain listed on the stock exchange. NIC will be the holding company of the merged business. A successful merger would be the biggest since Johannesburg-based Standard Bank Group in 2007 started talks to buy CFC Bank. A unified bank would strengthen its ability to expand regionally. Both lenders already operate in Uganda and Tanzania, and CBA has ambitions to operate in 16 African nations. NIC shares jumped 13% to 33 shillings a share, extending gains since talks started in early December to 46%. If you want to check into the share price data, that link for NIC Bank is there. As I said, 47.53. NSE 20 up 4.39% year to date. Nairobi Securities Exchange has opened 2019 bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And you can see that in the fact that the all share is now up 7.06% year to date. NSE 20 up 4.39% year to date. Top performing stocks of the NSE, have a look. There have been some real outstanding ones here. Everready is not one of those outstanding ones. Reported a loss, EPS loss of 55 cents a share. Versus 1 shilling and 27 cents a share profit last time round. Cash and cash equivalents is down to 68.566 million, no dividend. But they keep on striking an upbeat note in the commentary, and I'm really not sure why. Once again, thank you for stopping by.